Welcome to Data in Orbit, the Constellation podcast. I am Oksana, and alongside me is my co-host Krishad. In each episode, we talk to data leaders who are transforming industries by building data-driven organizations. Let's launch. Hello. Today we have Venky Kandaswamy. He is currently Director of Strategy and Optimization at Walmart Labs, but he is an experienced leader in all things data and especially a lot of background in data science. As a reminder, everything Venky shares here today reflects his personal opinions and not those of his employer.
And for the audience, let me do a short intro. Venky is a friend of mine. He is a veteran in data world. He spent a lot of time in Oracle, and I'm gonna say recently, but actually for a very long time, he's been working in Walmart, and he did many functions in data teams. And most recently, I see that you are more into how to give direction to business in terms of strategy, business strategy, by leveraging data itself, by bringing the best practices into the field. So that's why we have many questions to you.
Let's kick it off with GenAI. This is what's trending everywhere now. So, can you tell us a little bit about GenAI and how it came to be, a little bit about its history?
So we had this yet another evolution, which is now the big deal right now is generative data science, Gen AI, Chat GPT, etc. Those they were able to now take these unstructured data and then synthesize it into a language model. And then we have LLMs now, large language models. And with that, we are actually able to generate text, of course, by extension, generate images and audio. And the technology has gotten to a point where we got companies like OpenAI that have produced these tools, which are pretty hard for a company to do by themselves. It's kind of an ecosystem where you now have the ability to do these things. Like, you have vehicles and cars, but you need a freeway system, right, to actually be able to go anywhere. And that's what they accomplished, a combination of the hardware from people like NVIDIA and stuff, and a bunch of languages like from Google and Facebook, and then these models from OpenAI and other GPT networks. So now we are able to do a lot more with the data. Not only provide more insights and more information, but we are also able to now provide unique insights that we normally could not have derived using a procedural language or a procedural aspect. Like you say, do step one, step two, step three, step four, and you end up with step five, which is the end result.
Yeah.
That's how we used to do it. Now it's more holistic, right? So the system learns and is able to produce a unique result that you normally would not have been able to do with the procedural steps. So that is where we are at right now, and it's a very exciting time.
I'm curious on the tactical aspect of a data science team. Like, how have you seen Gen AI sort of disrupting typical workflows, because data science teams also are used to, getting things done in a specific way using traditional machine learning. And so how do you see in the real world, like what does that disruption look like for a data science team?
There's tremendous activity going on in that space. I can give you an example. Traditional data science, we use traditional extrapolation techniques to determine when a ship will arrive at a certain port. That is very standard way of doing things, right? It's just machine learning data science. But now with Gen AI, we can actually look at something that is we project is going to be delayed and say, okay, there are certain ocean conditions or some conditions that are happening in the industry or in some countries, or wars or port strikes or whatever. That is not information that we necessarily collect. But then Gen AI can be used to search that information and then combine it with what you have to provide a useful representation of why the delay could occur. And it could say, hey, there's a storm that is being predicted, so therefore ships are going to be delayed, etc. This is not information that we can necessarily collect routinely and keep, but we can use GenAI to do that because it has knowledge on how to extract that from the corpus of internet documents or publishing. And then we augment it with our own data that says, okay, this is the particular ship that we are interested in. And then what is that route, and is there any condition that's affecting that route? What we call, retrieval augmented generation, right? So RAG. So that's where we combine our internal information with what GenAI can provide by searching some other source and then putting together a concise summary or description. So that is where a lot of the GenAI work is going on. And of course, we have the traditional chatbots and things, that like everybody does. But I'm giving you this example as a more unique way of doing that.
So we talk in our previous episodes also, we interviewed a couple of veterans, and I think the rule of thumb for me is nobody does data for the sake of data, and we need to find how are we going to bridge data and the business goals. And I think the data science is the core, data science and analytics. I'd like to ask you, how do you navigate? Is there any short list for you to follow? Like, here are the best practices, or based on your experience in your career, here is the pitfalls. There are many evolution happen, new technologies came, but we humans keep repeating the same problems because our brain doesn't change, right? We don't evolve that fast. We keep committing the same error, same because the organizational behavior is stay the same. So if we can kick this off by addressing a couple of these bullet points, if you wish, then we can take the conversation furthermore.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about best practices, there is no one good practice per se, and it all depends on. It's this is a consultant answer, right? It all depends in where it is, but where things make a difference in terms of the people is one the experience, and then the second is the skill set. So the skill set allows you to look at a problem and see how you can solve it, etc. And then experience tell you what you are really need to be watching out for in terms of pros and cons or pitfalls, etc. But then at the end of the day, it's about an exploratory measure where you are trying to solve a new kind of problem. Now, once you have solved that problem, obviously people can now replicate that solution to other spaces. Like, to give you an example, we do computer vision where we start scanning for images and recognize images. Now, you can take that skill set, and at Walmart, for example, we scan produce that is coming in to identify if it's good or bad, like boxes of strawberries. The color can tell us whether it's spoiled or it's not okay, things like that. So you can now then build on that experience and skill set and start looking at business solutions that would really help. And I think that is where the best practice comes into play, is being able to combine your experience and your skill set to a new problem, and then being able to transpose that to other areas. And there's many people who do that very successfully, and a lot of companies that do that. And it's always good to learn from them at conferences and podcasts such as yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to organizational behavior, how do you shape like this experience and skill set when you are assigning people, organizing your team? How do you decide? Because the technology is moving, the new people are hired, maybe some knowledge goes away when people leave the company, the tribal knowledge goes away with them if you don't have very good document, and no company on this planet, as far as I know, got it nailed, the documentation, internal documentation, right? How
Mhm.
do you form the team and let the data team perform at their max?
Yeah, in my experience, a typical data team, there are three broad categories of people. Uh, you have the people that are learning, they are trying to get up to speed on certain things. And then there's people who can implement it at scale, like they're very good at the programming side of things, etc. And then you have the research folks, like who are, I wouldn't say that they're thinkers, but they are bringing a set of experience where they have taken a specific area and built a lot of expertise on that. These three types of people don't always work together, but you need all three of them, right? You need the ideas to come forth and to bring in new thinking that is more grounded in the research world or university academic world. And we need to be able to implement that at scale, right? And also be able to transfer that knowledge to the upcoming folks so that we have a smooth transition in the team. So we always try to balance it. So you need all these three kind of people, and that's what we look for. So any large project that we do, we always say, okay, are there the thought leadership is there, and is there the professional implementation skills, and also the transition or the team that can take over once this is done, because these resources are kind of limited in terms of the
Yeah,
implementers that can do at scale or the thought leaders. We need to be able to move them to other projects and then let the incoming folks that are more growing to be able to take it over and enhance the system or make it grow, keep it successful.
yeah, yeah.
That's what we look for.
Where is the line, like when you are equipping those data professionals in your team, you choose a specific functionality, maybe you choose someone is really talented and experienced, you try to give them the best tools and then so that they can do extreme things. And the versus to that, the other side is, okay, nobody's going to fall behind. Like, if you want to go further, you go together. If you want to go fast, you go alone. So how do you draw this line? Where do you make the trade-off if
Yeah.
you want to take the entire company, convert it into a data-driven culture, or execute fast, execute something really and cutting edge?
See, this is where the business side comes in, right? So you need the business vision and the business leadership. And the business leadership should have not only the ability to build system that will contribute to the bottom line, but also be able to explore and fail, to be able to see new systems and new things that can come in place. There's a balance between those two. At the end of the day, you have to deliver the product for the business that improves your gross margin or your bottom line. So that's
Mhm.
where our main focus would be. Can we do this? Obviously, having said that, those kind of systems we build on stable technology that's proven and well reinforced in the environment that you have in the company.
Yeah,
Of course, in order to do that, you should have done the research upfront, right? Be
yeah,
able to do that. So we need to know that there's a clear line of progression from exploratory projects to something that can be productionalized and fail fast. You try something, you don't doesn't work, you discard it, try something else. But if it works, you try to make it into a more streamlined thing that can be replicated across business systems that actually produce business value.
I wanted to ask you, I imagine in a company like Walmart with so much data, like even the alternatives to choose from in terms of projects are very large. And so I'm curious, how do you prioritize which projects are even worth exploring and starting to dive? How do you even measure ROI, say for these projects, to even check if it's worth to spend the resources, the time, and take the focus for it?
Well, our prioritization is always based on business value, right? We need to deliver. Delivery is the key to everything. But having said that, it's kind of an 80-20 rule. Like 80% of your projects have to be grounded on business delivery and business value. And 20% is more exploratory research projects, some of which may go nowhere. And you can't exclusively do either or, right? So there's always the team is working on things that are delivering for the business, and then certain things that are exploratory. For example, we are doing a lot of things on Gen AI where we are trying to synthesize attributes and attribute values that we have never known before. And Gen AI is very good for that because it has a broad knowledge of the things that are out there in the language. They're able to come up with new attributes that previously would have required a taxonomist, somebody who's like really familiar with, say, English or Spanish or something, to be able to work that up. But now we can automate those kind of process. Of course, it started out as a research project. Now we are able to do that in ways which are useful for the business.
Okay. I wanna pull you back to organizational behavior,
Yeah.
and then we can touch back again, like the product and the budget prioritization. You said two things. I want to double tap on that. One is fail fast, and how would you do that in a scale of Walmart? They, launching things is so hard and it takes tremendous amount of time. And the other one is you also mentioned that you prefer to work with the stable technology when, especially when it comes to how are you going to design the team distribution as assignation of the teams for each project. So stable technology means you are not going to work with a startup. I'm not trying to inject here our company here
Yeah.
because of the startup, but this is also what we are in this business. Why,
Right.
right? So how are you going to manage this in the scale of Walmart while everything is taking too long? Both you are going to try things and fail fast, but at the same time, you want to work with the stable technology.
Yes. It boils down to business vision coming all the way from the CEO and the top companies. Normally, we have facilities where we work with startups and things. Like in Walmart, it's called Store Number 8. It's a cryptic name,
Yeah.
but Store Number 8 exclusively works with startups and people that have new ideas. Sometimes it's just a 2-person, 3-person team that has come to Walmart, and Walmart will finance them and have them give them the space, technology, hardware, etc., to build their systems out and see if it works. Those are not driven by business need, right? So they are just purely exploratory. But coming out of that would be actual technology pieces that we could leverage for business teams. The core of Walmart is always driven by business requirements, product management and building incremental changes to the products or etc. But there is also another set of the organization, which is more a strategic teams that are not driven by business requirements. So they don't have product managers dictating what they should build or not build. So these strategic teams, their job is to go and look at existing technology or things that have been done in other parts of the industry, not necessarily retail, and see if they can be transposed into the retail environment. And those teams are building, they're not exploratory projects, but they're actually projects that we think that Walmart can use, but they don't necessarily have a business sponsor yet. So they'll build these things as a POC, and then they will go try to sell it to a business sponsor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all of these things work together, and that is how we try to innovate. Now, underlying all this is that you have to have technology and platforms that will allow people to do things quickly. So we have sandbox environments and things where you don't have to go justify getting a bunch of GPUs or hardware or CPUs from GCP or from Azure. It's already available to you. And as long as you have a good idea, whether from the strategic teams or from the Store Number 8 innovation teams, they can use that and they don't have to justify the cost. It just becomes overhead, what we call technical debt. So
Yeah.
that's how this works.
It sounds like it's a bottoms up approach from these people sourcing ideas to work on, and then there's like the top down initiatives that align with the business strategy. So I'm curious if there are like defined percentages or thresholds to keep it balanced, or is it more like if the project sounds good enough then it gets ingested, and if you get a sponsor, like how does that play out?
I don't think there's a percentage split or anything like that. The strategic teams are funded as strategic teams. They're not driven by the business products. Of course, the business team, the normal, what you'd call the engineering teams, etc., they are driven by product management, product vision. So again, it's 80-20 rule, right? There's a bunch of strategic teams in Walmart that do things like these things. And then there's these exclusive teams that are completely independent of the business requirements or needs. They're purely research exploratory projects, which is the store number 8, and they work with startups and things like that.
How does it differ in data? Like, the, obviously, like it is a software, the technology, and everything. But when it comes to data, I believe even you mentioned the technical debt. Is there any differences when it comes to data, dealing with the data or the data teams?
Well, data is wealth, right? Data is your gold mine, and some of which obviously Walmart wouldn't want to share, or any other
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
So there's highly sensitive information, and then non-sensitive information. So when people look at the data quality and the composition, our efforts are more on the highly sensitive and sensitive data, and these are curated. The value is what would I say? It's validated and pretty much kept clean. And then you have the non-sensitive data, which could be a lot of the documents and stuff we have. Now, some of these documents could actually be very valuable and have sensitive data, but we don't know that, right? So when you look at this huge set of PDFs or Excels and things that suppliers, etc., send to us, there might be nuggets of information that we don't know. We simply don't know that we don't know, right? So
Yeah.
we don't know. That is where we as data scientists try to glean that information, and then we might find something that's very useful, and then it gets escalated to more sensitive or highly sensitive information, and then we'll build on it to do that.
Okay,
So
but
to
you
give
do
you an
that.
idea, like about half the data we have is we don't even know what's in there, but
Okay,
we
but
collect it. Right?
you determine what to clean, what to fix
Right.
based on what business asks for you, not proactively, but more about business makes a request, and then you come and you start to dig
We,
in, try
we, we do both. The traditional information, like that's related to sales or inventory or things like that, those, of course, the business will come and ask you to do things or do certain things. Like, for example, recently we started acquiring shipping information from
Mhm.
Maersk, the big shipping
Yeah,
company.
yeah, that's
They
right.
send us information about what containers are on what ships and when it's leaving. So it's like a air traffic control. We know where all the ships are and things like that. So, and then that is based on business need, right? The business said, "Hey, I want to know where my container is in the ship, even though Walmart hasn't received it yet.
Yeah.
Which port is it coming to? How long will it take the customs to clear it? How long will it take for the FDA inspection, like for example, seafood, etc." And then there's a lot of these other information that we collect, like the reviews, for example, on our website. They run customer focus groups and feedback from that. So a lot of that is audio, just like you and I are talking. We capture the audio. We don't really know what is in there yet, right? But we do sentiment analysis, and we can glean information that is very valuable. Like, for example, this set of products people don't like. Maybe they don't like it in this part of the country. Maybe this is the season where it seems to sell well.
Hmm.
And things like that, we are able to glean from that data. So that's what I meant by a gold mine, right? So when you mine the data, you get information that then you go and actually ask the questions that is relevant to what you thought was valuable, and then it keeps adding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another
A little
example
bit.
is, we have a lot of products that look similar. Like you take water bottles, insulated water bottles. Since we have such a large breadth of products, they could be selling it in sports category. They could also be selling it in babies. All kinds of different things, and they could be different suppliers too, and
Yeah.
they may be selling at different prices. Previously, this used to be information that you send in a report, right? Pages and pages of report, and you expect the business user to keep track of it, and it's their business, so they'll go figure out whether they want to combine the suppliers or do. But with Gen AI, we can actually go and find extraneous information about those suppliers out in the internet, etc., and then provide a summary in an email saying, hey, this supplier seems to be having some issues at other places. Maybe you want to look at combining these two suppliers, or even look at, hey, there's some conditions happening in the East Coast. You might want to think about moving it to the Midwest because the transportations are cheaper, fuel prices are coming lower. That kind of strategic decisions can be made by combining these efforts. But in a
Okay.
tactical sense, it's still data, right? And it's still traditional reports that we can provide. But on top of that, you can also provide strategic information that previously a human being would have thought about, right? That is where the AI comes into play. So we are synthesizing the experience of a lot of people in providing that summary, which previously would have been done by a human expert.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a wrapping up question.
Yeah.
A little bit more than 3 decades you have experience like decision support systems, big data, and big data was the biggest fight like 20 years
Yeah. I'm an
ago.
old guy.
Now you're talking about, right? And let's be a little bit, I know in your daily job you plan, you strategize for the long term, but just to make it clear, I think maybe even easier to answer. What do you think that the landscape is going to look like in 2025? What kind of world we are going to be living in when it comes to data-driven world, data-driven businesses around us?
Yeah.
Um, anything relates to employment or business decision-making processes, all sort of things. What do you think?
The landscape is changing a lot. There's new tools coming in all over all the time. 2 to 3 years is about all the technology lasts. Even if you take something as mundane as databases, right? Things are always changing where you have new capabilities and new things. So I think the key is to be able to learn and fit into that model. And in 2025, 26, etc., it's always going to be the ability to extract information from unstructured data. And hopefully we'll just do away with data modeling totally. But I think the progression is to let the system come up with the model and get that. So I think that would be, at least in my space, that would be the big game changer. That people don't have to model the data up front to glean
Yeah.
information.
Okay, that's very interesting. That's cool.
Are you, as a follow up to that, are you thinking more this sort of evolution of unstructured data usage because you feel like structured data has reached some maturity that we know how to do it, it's easier for humans, and like we've sort of mastered it, and that's why you feel like the energy or the focus is going to go more towards unstructured data, or why, what makes you say unstructured data?
Um, when I meant unstructured data, I didn't mean like PDF documents or things like that. It's basically data that hasn't been formally modeled. If you take a table, for example, sales data, right? Previously, people needed to know how to read the table, like be able to use SQL, SQL queries, etc., to get information. But with the AI technologies we have, we don't really need to model the data, right? The system can learn, okay, this is actually a product, that this is a sales figure, and this is the inventory status, etc. And then you can just ask questions like, hey, what is my sales for the water bottle last year? And it can go find the information because basically it has already learned all of these things from the data. So we no longer need to keep it in a very strict structure like a table with column names and things like that. Now, having said that, 80% of what we do is still very structured, but I think it's going to that. And the new sources of information when we get, we probably are more lenient in our modeling techniques. This is not new, right? This has happened over the last 20 years or so as well. If you remember, we used to do ER modeling where you look at entities, you do relationships, and it all has to be normalized and no duplicate records anywhere, etc., etc. But then all of that got thrown away once we went to BigQuery or like distributed data, and we basically just put everything together in one big row, right? So that was again going from a very strict structure to a more relaxed structure. And then you had document databases where you don't even do no need to have data in one row. You can have multiple rows in one document, right? MongoDB, for example, that's where they grew their strength. So you can have documents. Again, I think the next evolution is why do you need to have structured documents? Like where you have XML or YAML or whatever. It just could be free form text. And the systems are now intelligent enough and capable enough to glean that data for you without you having to. In fact, behind the scenes, they're basically writing the code. They're writing SQL queries in the code that you normally would have had a programmer do.
Yeah.
So now we want to have the programmers actually not concentrate so much on learning that basic programming language, but rather work with these tools to say, hey, how can I tailor these tools and to get the information I want, which today, is the evolution of what we call prompt engineering, right? So now you're dealing with systems that are intelligent, that know pretty much, a gazillion things to do, but they are completely useless unless you ask the right question. So now that is where the skill set has gone, right? How can you ask the right question? And that is where a lot of the experience and the ability to understand the data to get the information you want is going in, because we spend a lot of time training people to engineer these prompts so that you get the right information out of it. Whereas previously we would have trained them to actually do the programming and the coding. I think that's the evolution we're going into.
Interesting.
Cool.
Hopefully it'll make all our jobs easier. You can just sit at home and
Yeah.
just ask the
I
question.
mean, maybe make it easier or really replace it, right? Because if you think
Yeah.
of a data engineer, their role is really to model the data, put all those rules in place, and make that data
Yeah.
structured. And so, if AI can do all of it, yes, there will be some other needs. I'm thinking even we're in a quality business, and like
Yeah.
quality from this unstructured non-model data is more challenging, right? Because like how do you define
Yeah.
rules, how do you validate that whatever is there is correct, is not
Yeah.
incomplete? So
Yeah.
it's
And
interesting.
that's the hierarchy, right? Things that are very, very important, that's driving your bottom line of your business, it has to be structured, because you need to be able to know exactly what you have.
Yeah,
But then we are now collecting so much information, so much data, that you cannot always be doing that in
yeah,
every place, right? So now the challenge is like, how can I leverage that other corpus of data that you haven't really spent time modeling and still be able to get some quick results? Quick in the sense something that is reasonable to do without having a 25-person team that's doing data modeling for a year to get that thing. And then you have to do ETL, and you have to clean the data, you have to load it, you have to look at archives, you have to do all that, right? Maybe you can dispense with that in certain areas.
that makes also more sense with what you said earlier about the rapid exploration and failing fast, and
Yeah,
like with those capabilities, then even data science teams are going to be more enabled to try more things, because like the data becomes useful much quicker rather than how it is today, that all
yeah,
this modeling and preparing is really a bottleneck that data science teams
yeah,
sometimes have to way to just even check what a data source could give them,
Yeah,
or make
see,
improve the
now
model.
the tools are there, the practices are there, the methodologies are there. 15 years ago, you would have actually needed a PhD guy to actually do any kind of data science because they are the ones who know the mathematics behind it. But it's not the case now. I mean, if I see somebody asking for a PhD candidate for a data science work, I would say, hey, guys, you really know what you want to do? It's like, are you trying to run an academic research project? No, right? Generally speaking, if you know Python and you know all the libraries that are out there, any reasonable programmer can now create data science algorithms. And so the experience and the expertise has now come into the professional programming world rather than the academic research world. That's a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to human business from data business, given that these are going to happen according to your vision, what would you suggest? Our audience is mostly data engineers, architects, data governance professionals. So we have a lot of data scientists listening to us. So what would you recommend to them in their career or in their daily life as a best practice or an advice for their career?
Yeah, I mean, still the meat of the business is structured data, right? And you got to have a solid grounding in that. But
Yeah.
where we are going is the ability to glean information quickly from unstructured sources. And that doesn't necessarily mean just audio or video, right? It could be just anything. And to start building your skill set in that, I think is very valuable because there's a lot of interesting business problems that can be solved with that kind of data.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. Cool.
That
That
was
was great.
great.
That was very authentic, very candid, and very enlightening. I learned a lot, at least. I don't know about our audience, but I'm sure they're going to find it useful. Thanks a lot. That was a great session. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you for listening. If you liked today's episode, remember to share and subscribe. And if you want to learn more about what we're doing at Constellation, visit us at constellationdata.com.